there are so many people trapped in their minds academically and so many elitists that they never ever come down to see the real issues. They have these theories, these concepts, they write papers about them, they write editorials about them, but they never get their hands dirty. And I really wish that a lot of people who think certain thoughts would first see if those theories, those things that they're saying are really true or not. And they're going to discover that for us, liberalism has not been our best friend.
It is hard to dismantle a system when for many of us, this system was set up to maintain the status quo of power and privilege.
The origins of capitalism cannot be separated from the origins of racism.
Are we that weak of a people?
White fragility is essentially the defensive reaction or response that white people have in learning about their relationship with the structure of racism.
We are constantly coming up with these new ideas, these new concepts that only drive us further apart.
Babies are taught to be racist or anti-racist. There's no neutrality.
You're always going to be racist, actually.
Black people are not a weak race.
I want to draw your attention to the fact that I'm white. To be white is to see oneself outside of race. And it's taken me many, many years to be able to draw people's attention to my race and see any significance in it.
We are not a race that always requires the benevolence of other people in order for us to succeed.
Down one path is the path of racism, the path of bigotry and discrimination, of inequity and death.
This is what you call bad faith. What many Americans fighting today's culture wars, from systemic racism, anti-racism, to critical race theory, fail to realize is that they are fighting an old enemy, well known to blacks: bad faith.
Unfortunately, in our community, at times, we're always blaming the white person or the system or systemic racism for the way that our community is.
Racism in America has always made the classic struggle between good faith and bad faith much harder for blacks. How do you keep good faith in America when you constantly are told that you are oppressed, a victim of white supremacy?
When you deal with this area of the South Side, the first thought is, okay, we need the government to come in and just do this and do that and do this and do that. But it's very damaging, because what it does is it makes the government take the place of a person's mentality.
Bad faith is faithlessness, a disbelief in our power to make a life, a disbelief in America and her principles, so that we end up giving up even before starting.
There's nothing wrong with the United States of America as an idea. It is the best idea and the best system that exists in this world. And if you do want to tear this idea down, if you do want to tear this system down, then you must replace it with something that's better.
Where does this bad faith come from?
That white person that you see calling himself a liberal is the most dangerous thing in the entire Western Hemisphere. He's the most deceitful. He's like a fox.
It's put us in a weaker position to make us believe and think that we cannot succeed.
This liberalism that Pastor Brooks referred to is post-60s liberalism.
The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. And by winning the friendship and support of the Negro, the white liberal is able to use the Negro as a pawn or a weapon in this political football game.
Unlike classic liberalism and its focus on individual development, post-60s liberalism derives its power from America's original sin, which is not slavery, but simply the use of race as a means to power. From the beginning, post-60s liberalism failed to recognize the gradual upward progress many blacks made in the first half of the 20th century. Many bought homes for their largely intact families. These blacks possessed good faith, even as segregation reigned everywhere.
From Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky, these families came to Chicago and they moved to Bronzeville, they moved to the Woodlawn area, and they created businesses. There were doctors, there were lawyers, there were businesses, there were jazz clubs. It was a very thriving community.
Instead of building upon this progress, post-60s liberalism ushered in an era of dependency.
Now you're going to see social programs in place. You're going to see businesses not existing. And if they do exist, they're not owned by individuals from our community. They're owned from people outside of our community. You're going to see schools that are dilapidated, schools that are inefficient and not working. You're going to see a community that is not thriving. You're going to see a community that is just trying to survive.
Since the use of race as a means to power cannot lead to adequate and honest development, it was largely whites seeking redemption from historical racism that benefited most from this power. This failure of black development contributed to the creation of a permanent black underclass. It was this failure that generated bad faith. Redlining, blockbusting, and other segregation practices drew lines around many of these neighborhoods. But it was the post-60s liberalism and its bad faith that built the walls around those who lived there.
Just because I do not want critical race theory taught to my children in school does not mean that I'm a racist.
You need to be arrested! You're teaching children to hate others because of their skin color.
Instead of admitting its failure in places like the South Side, post-60s liberalism marched further left and upward into America's middle and upper classes.
CRT is another one of those new things that is coming up to the surface. Although it's been here for some time, now it's being used, it's being politicized, it's being used as something to drive even a deeper wedge into our society.
Critical race theory is teaching that white people are bad. That would teach my daughter that her mother is evil.
All of these lessons have the intent to make our children feel disgust towards our nation.
Most of these Americans had turned a blind eye to the devastating impact of bad faith on poor black communities. And now the rot that neglect created has come back to bite them.
Will look back and be responsible for the dismantling of the greatest country in the world by reverting to teaching hate and that race is a determining factor on where your destiny lies.
The white man you heard on the South Side became white supremacy. The system, or the man, became systemic racism. White people became white privilege or white fragility. Acting white became merit is white supremacy. Racism is everywhere became critical race theory. All of these mantras lead to one product: bad faith.
Black and white children, Hispanic children, you know why they get along? Because they don't look at each other's color. So you're the racist, not them, not us. You're judging and dividing. You're causing segregation. Everything that we fought for, everything that I fought for years.
Bad faith gnaws at our belief that we are making progress as a people and as a nation.
I will not let any person tell me that this country, that this nation that we live in needs to be tore down, because then you're telling me that my grandparents marching, my great-grandparents doing whatever they could do so they could vote, and making sure that certain laws and for getting hosed down, getting bitten by dogs, you're telling me that they didn't do anything that there was no progress that has been made. And I don't get upset easily, but that would upset me.
Back on the South Side, where bad faith stripped the bootstraps from many boots, Pastor Brooks and Pastor Grooms work every day to spread good faith, the source of power that opens possibility itself.
We need that good faith, that type of faith that says, listen, we may have differences, we may come from different places, but at the end of the day, we can make life better for everybody.
These pastors work through their church and their nonprofit community center, Project Hood, to reduce violence in one of America's toughest neighborhoods. The pastors offer classes ranging from construction to electrical engineering.
This is the specifications that was installed for this house. And how many square foot? 1,350. Now you take your square foot, which is what, 1,700, and you multiply 3 VA, your numbers are gonna be different.
That's how you win. We had women that signed up for an electrician class, and they worked hard. They had challenging moments. And I guarantee you, every last one of them thought the same thing that I thought my first day of basic training. What in the world am I doing here?
The pastors know that the stronger the individual makes oneself, the more of an asset that individual is to friends, family, and society at large.
And because they stuck with it, they are licensed electricians, and they are now able to do and become electrician.
Ladies, I would like to congratulate you all. This is just the beginning of your greatness. There are many more trophies in your future.
The task before these two admirable pastors is a daunting one. Bad faith has deeply scarred the South Side of Chicago. None of the billions of dollars flowing through the diversity industry will ever reach them. These two pastors work on.
Quote I will leave you guys with is that poverty ran in my family until it ran into me. So you guys have to think of that.
Good faith is the only antidote to what ails the South Side and America at large. It is our only hope.
There you go.
That mindset and mentality of Martin Luther King when he said that he dreams of a time and looks toward a place where all of God's children can be all of God's children, where people are not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I think when you take that thought that we need a place where people are judged not by the content, not by their color, but by the content of their character, that is a meaningful, deep statement. And I try to live my life like that. I don't want to judge people by their color. I want to judge people by the content of their character. And I hope and pray that that dream that Martin Luther King had, that it will be lived out in all of society, that eventually we can get to the place where character and the content of character matters more than color ever could.